Welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. I'm your host, Jill, and I have Katt Brooks with me today. Katt's a holistic grief therapist, counselor. She also does a lot of work with alignment and helping women in their everyday lives. What I would love to do, though, is hear from her. What, in her own words, is it that Katt Brooks is all about?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so I actually work as a holistic grief coach. And what do I do? Yeah, I am all about bringing women to a space of feeling a deeper connection to themselves. And grief is a huge manifestation of that, in that it is really apparent in all of our lives, in so many people's lives, and it can be something that really separates us from feeling connected to ourselves, right? Because emotions are hard to feel, and connecting to ourselves after a grief experience, we feel lost. We don't know who we are anymore. We've lost our identity, our purpose, maybe. And I really work towards allowing women to feel safe in their bodies again, feel safe in who they are as a human being. So they have the confidence and sturdiness to go around their life, to be in their boundaries, to be in their truth. And it's interesting because yes, I do that because women have gone through grief experiences, but we all need this, right? So many of us are in capacities where we haven't been connected to ourselves in so long. Maybe because we are a mom, or because we are not feeling fulfilled in our career, or feeling detached and so busy. And so it's something that I just feel really passionate about, is bringing women back to a space of trusting themselves again.
Yes. Oh, that hits home for me so much. And it makes me think about the times where, like, nothing really traumatic happened, but there over time was a shift in my identity, whether it being like graduating high school or, sorry, university and no longer being a student, right?
Mhm.
Or I was talking to some kids about that the other day in a presentation. I was like, I had a really hard time when it was the first September that I didn't go back to school, right? And that's not grief, but that's an opportunity. Like moments like that, life transitions where you find yourself just kind of like floating, and feeling kind of
Yeah.
lost. That's when
Do
we
you know what?
need.
I would actually argue that that is grief, though, because I think that our definition of grief is very, like, we think it has to be traumatic and big, and it is, but we also neglect parts of ourselves by not identifying that, yeah, when we transition in life, we're grieving our past self, we're grieving our student life, we're grieving our past careers, we're grieving being a woman before having a child, these are all grief experiences, and if we're not identifying that, it can be something that we push aside because we're like, cool, now I have this new career. I should just move on and be okay with it. But the reality is, many of us miss or long for someone we used to be, right?
Yeah. And I think we don't even allow ourselves to identify that until we're sort of in the symptoms. Like, what are some of the things that your clients are experiencing that make them realize that they need someone to walk with them through this experience and guide them?
Yeah, I would say a lot of them are feeling lost, like they don't know who they are anymore. Um, like they're feeling like they're questioning every single decision in their life. Like we should know that when someone says something or we make a decision in our life, we're like, this is fully me. Like this is a hell yes versus this is a no, like a no, right? But they come to me in a space where they're not feeling like they know who they are, how to make decisions, and really feeling like a disconnect from their body and feeling stuck in their mind, stuck in kind of the mental ego takeover or the spiraling thoughts that just are making them question their reality, right? And that can be from a large grief experience, but that is also many of us in society, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many of the listeners probably are walking around going through their lives, not realizing that this can be considered a grief experience. And it is something that, like, there are actually professionals out here who can help with this. Like, I remember, and I feel like a lot of the conversations I have with my own personal girlfriends are like, oh, they're okay, but they're not great, but like it's fine. We're getting by. We have this challenge and that challenge, and but it's almost made to be acceptable, this
Mhm.
baseline level of discomfort or unhappiness, or like we're not looking for perfection by any means, but recognizing that like it's okay if you have this low grade dissatisfaction to do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And often when we're just writing off a hard experience or like a just hard day as like, oh, it's okay. Like it was meant to happen or all these different things, we're actually like pushing away a sensation that really needed to be felt, right? Or we're telling ourselves it's not okay to have hard days, right? And I think that's one of the things that I work a lot with my community with is we can have amazing days where we feel so in alignment. We do all the things, we feel passionate, creative, we do the workouts or whatever it is, do the meditation. And then maybe the next day feels like crap and we can't do any of that. And we feel like we're back to square one. And in our society, I think we think that we have to be on all the time. We have to be perfect all the time, or things have to be okay. And they're not always like that. And we're cyclical human beings and we fluctuate up and down. And the most important thing is to know that our needs on that really great day are very, very different from our needs on the day when we're feeling low. And I think one thing I advocate most for is like when we're with our friends, why can't we be honest? You know, why can't we actually say how we are authentically feeling? Because being seen in that is probably what we needed most rather than saying, oh, I'm okay, because then we're not acknowledging that difficult experience moving through our life.
I love that you brought that up. And I think it's so true that, especially like in our 30s and 40s, our friends might not be as like close girlfriends to us as we would tell our 16-year-old bestie everything, right? Good, bad, ugly, didn't matter. We'd dish it all out. And like we don't necessarily have those types of friendships in our 30s and 40s. So it's almost like I see people being afraid to show up as their true version of themselves on each and any day. Just like you're saying, like, yeah, things aren't great, but I don't really want to talk about it necessarily, and not feeling safe to really show up in the version of you that is you today. And I think we
Yeah.
need to really continue this conversation of just it's it's okay to show up as you are. You know, you're gonna get much more value out of an interaction with someone if you can be honest and show up, hey, I'm not 100% today. You know, here's what
Yeah.
I need, or I just need to talk to someone, or I need someone to listen to me, or I need a hug, or I just need quiet, or understanding what you need to feel a little bit more okay.
Yeah. And we're so protective of ourselves because I think so many of us have been hurt in the past of maybe opening and then it wasn't received in the way we expected. Or as human beings, we have huge expectations, right, of what we think we should receive. And then so we get these huge protective layers on ourselves that it's like, oh, I can't bring this part of me to this space, right? I can't bring this hard part because maybe I'll hurt them or maybe they will say something that hurts me. And we build up walls and walls and walls that we just start to find that there's no safety for us to just show up as we are. But one of the things I talk about a lot with my clients is like to be yourself in life also means bringing the hard parts, right?
Mhm.
It's bringing the grief, it's bringing the trauma, it's bringing the sadness, the anger, the frustration, annoyance, whatever it is, because if we aren't bringing it, that's saying, sorry, grief, sorry, anger, you're actually not a part of me. And I don't accept you. But when we're not accepting the hard parts, it actually like closes off the good parts too. So that's why we do get confused. It's like, who am I if I'm none of these things or if I'm not allowed to be these parts of myself, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I love how you touched on earlier, like encouraging your community and your clients to feel the feelings and like move it through the body. Can you talk to us a little bit about why that's important, and then maybe give us a couple of tools of things that listeners could, if they're thinking like, oh God, I need to work on this actually, that they could just do today to start to feel a little bit different?
Yeah, yeah. When you think about when we're moving through life, most of the time when we're feeling anxiety or we're feeling something in the body, we're scared to feel it, right? Our we go straight into the mind and the subconscious mind and it starts to take over and worry or ruminate or you bottle everything up, right? And when we do this is our system protecting us because it's saying, "Oh, this emotion is too big to feel." most of us as kids maybe didn't have the opportunity to explode in big emotions or to have the safe space to have emotions. So it makes a sense that we're not okay with it, right? But when we're suppressing or pushing emotion away or brooding, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So the importance of actually feeling, and when I say feeling, it's not ruminating and thinking, it's feeling the sensation in your body. Like, okay, where, like what I do with my clients is we maybe get into a calm meditative state and then we connect to the body. And then we start to pay attention to the sensations in the body. In safety, it's like, okay, if I were to really think about how my body is reacting in this moment, what sensations am I feeling? And then we can go deeper. Like, okay, now I feel it everywhere. Can I pinpoint it more? Is it in my heart? Is it in my throat? Is it in my belly, my limbs? And as we pinpoint it, we can ask it questions and say, okay, what am I feeling? What is this emotion? And then often emotion comes out and we can have curiosity there to go deeper. Like often we can feel anxiety, right? And anxiety is in the chest, but anxiety might be masking something that's deeper, like a situation in our life when we haven't been seen or supported by our partners, by a situation in our life, right? And the difference between feeling an emotion and ruminating means that we can get to the core of what's happening. When we ruminate, we're moving from reaction. We're letting the fear, the anxiety, the anger rule how we are like interacting with people versus getting to the core. Wow, I was actually hurt because you know what? My friends didn't see me. Like they didn't hold me in the way I wanted to be held. And I, instead of like reacting and making the situation into something it didn't mean.
Right. It's wild that we're not taught this as kids, or our generation wasn't taught this as kids. I love that we are teaching our kids now because we know now.
Hmm.
And I'm just thinking on that topic, like, are there ways that um, we can be supportive of our kids as they feel their emotions and guide them through so that they feel safe as they grow up and move through life to experience emotions without letting it get to the point where like they're always having outbursts and they don't care, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do we encourage them to find that happy place of experiencing and moving through these emotions in a safe way?
Yeah. Have you heard of Dr. Becky Kennedy?
No.
Okay, any listener who is a mom, please go research her
Writing it
because she's
down.
the most amazing person to talk about this topic. And
Yep.
I've learned so much from her. And as being an adult experiencing things as well too, but we we want to honor our kids' feelings, right? And a lot of us are really we always think we should say it's okay, or we try and fix the problem for them and we try and make it better. But when you think about being an adult, and many of my clients moving through grief, anyone who says it's okay, they're like they would be on fuego, right? Or if they tried to fix it and said, oh, don't worry, you'll get another job, or they're in a better place, or something like that. That makes them livid, right? That's
Yep.
the same thing for a child when when we're not validating what they're experiencing, or we disregard and we try and distract them to something else. That's saying that their feeling isn't important. That creates a child that feels like it's not safe to be able to feel. So much is about being with our children when they're reacting, even though my nervous system is going like crazy when she is reacting, right? It's like, how can I calm myself so I can be with her in her reaction so she can feel safe? I can validate her so that she can integrate this and then move on and learn, right?
Hmm. Being the calm in the room for them. I love that.
Yeah.
What kind of tools would you suggest that we as the parent then can implement? Because I had this situation the other night where my daughter was like experiencing, and it was physical pain, but I still had the like dysregulation of
Totally.
having an unhappy child. And it's really hard for me, something I need to work on, to tolerate distress in my children
Yeah.
because I want to swoop in and fix it. And so it's something I'm working on. But like, if there's other moms in the same boat, what kind of tools can we have in these moments where we're like, oh, I know I need to let them feel this and be calm, but I'm not calm. How do I get calm?
Yeah. I think it's first giving yourself compassion of the situation. It's like, okay, realizing that my nervous system is reacting. from something in my life, but I'm safe. My child is safe. And like, and then regulating yourself, right? When we can regulate ourselves first, like, then we have a clear mind. I remember when I used to work with kids and teach them like about fight or flight mode, like when you like flip your lid, they always talk about so that your whole entire prefrontal cortex is like not functioning when we're in fight or flight. You're moving from like your amygdala, and you can't problem solve. You can't say the right thing. You can't do anything correctly, right? So when we are actually calming ourselves first, whether that's taking 3 breaths or taking a step away from your child for a moment to regulate yourself, having a go-to mantra that can help you feel like you can be a sturdy and supportive parent to your child, it makes such the difference, right? Because when you're able to get out of fight or flight mode, you can actually address your child in the correct way, right? You can have this skill set to say, okay, I am a great mom. I can help my daughter through this. She is having a hard time, and that's okay. She's allowed. And it helps from the distress of what it's doing to our nervous system, right? Like when someone's screaming at you, yeah, our nervous systems are going crazy. So if we can get our nervous system back to a regulated state, we can show up for our children more deeply, right?
Yeah. And so much easier said than done, which is why I
Mm-hmm.
love that there are coaches like you out here who can help us through this thing. Like, because it's one thing to hear it on a podcast and to cognitively understand it, right? But until you can really use these tools in a habitual way without thinking about it, you're not there yet. And we need people to help us like practice and support us when we don't get it right and encourage us and be in community with other people who are working on the same types of skills. And that's what I love about like what's happening right now in this space is that we're showing up and self-identifying like, hey, I need a little help with this. And there's no like shame like there was with self-help
Totally.
in the 90s or whatever, right? Like it's not taboo to like step up and say, hey, I'm working on this for myself. And I recognize that I need some help. So
Yeah.
love the work that you're doing. Like, is there
I,
still, sorry, I was just going to ask
oh,
if you still feel like there's shame around this with people who work with you, or is it pretty just like, I don't
oh
know.
my God, there's shame everywhere. Yes, shame, shame. We shame ourselves so much.
Yeah.
Um, like in everything. Like conversations I have most often with my clients are like, "Oh, I've been so good for so long and taking care of myself, and then this happened." And then people shame themselves, and it's like what shame does is like not supportive whatsoever, right? Because it pushes us back into a space of not being okay that of how we responded. We can't be perfect. One of my favorite neuroscientists is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he talks about like everyone in the world is going to react, right? We're all going to react. We're all going to get triggered. We're all going to get dysregulated. But what we can understand is that we can shorten the reaction. He even says he reacts, right? So the work of what we're doing is to make that time frame smaller or have less times when we move into a dysregulated state and like move into old crappy patterns versus like being present and being able to react in a different way, right? And if we shame ourselves, then we push ourselves back to a space of like unworthiness and undeserving and all of that stuff. Um, and in both of those parts, like all of this mindset work or mind body connection, it's a practice, right? And when we're doing it to support our children, when we're doing it to support ourselves, understanding that I think the most important part is taking time to ourselves to know that we deserve time to take care of ourselves, whether it is going outside and taking a walk, doing exercise, meditating, cooking, bike riding, whatever it is, because giving ourselves these moments of connection to ourselves is actually practice for those super hard moments that it's like if I can teach my body to be in a calm state when I'm safe, when I'm doing something I love, I can practice more when my world is dysregulated, I can practice and know that space more comfortably, that I can show up for my daughter in presence. I can show up to my partner when we're in a dysregulated state with more presence, right? And I think understanding it's a practice, but having safe spaces as a woman, as a mother, to like connect to yourself so that you can use that tool in the harder moments of your day, right?
Yeah, I love all of that. I love using our like framing this time to take to care for ourselves, which is hard for moms to wrap their mind around, like how to make it acceptable, right? But using this idea of like the more that you do this and get to know the sense of who you are calm, who you are centered, who you are aligned, you that's a tool to use to support your family. Like that's a knowledge you need to be able to use these tools. You have to know how you feel or how you want to feel in those moments by practicing
Totally.
to feel it. Like that's amazing. And I really loved that little nugget from Joe Dispenza too about the goal not being to eliminate the reaction, but just to shorten it.
Hmm.
That was really helpful and eye opening too. Thank you.
Hmm.
Oh, good. What are you doing in terms of community and working with clients? Like, how can people continue to be in your world and learn from you and just dive into this?
Yeah. So yeah, a majority of my work is with one-to-one clients, supporting them in getting into, yeah, their hearts, getting back to know themselves, being confident and connected in their truth. But I run a lot of like women's groups or women's retreats and all these different things because what you were saying at the beginning, kind of about showing up to your friends in vulnerability, honestly, the one thing I hear from every single person I work with, my friends or in my community, is women who are just desiring deeper, more authentic connection with people, with women. And so I've really been on such a desire to create more and more spaces for women to come together to who are doing this work, who want to talk about like being dysregulated, who want to talk about tools and who want to just like also be with women without all of the ego coming in and all of the weird thoughts, right? And it's just like, how can I just show up? And it's same thing as what we're talking about like being centered or being aligned. Like we need to practice being with women too in safety to open, right? And sometimes that has to be in like a container, right? Where you are going because the safety is created, right? Then you are able to like create the sturdiness and connection in yourself to start to show up in your communities, in your world more in that, right? Because you've released kind of that fear, that anxiety from your nervous system, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. And I love the way you describe things. And it's just such a beautiful reminder that when we show up, we sometimes need to be held and like to be in, we need to invest our, we need to commit our time, right? And our money and our energy and invest in ourselves to be able to come to a space like this. They don't just exist out in the world anymore. We need to search them
Hmm.
out, right?
Hmm.
I think about this all the time. I have an online community I call the Village, and it's like I wanted, like, yes, Facebook groups are great, and like all of these places that we think in the world we can go to get some of this connection, but it's never the truest connection with the people who are in the same path as us. It's not
Totally.
sort of moderated and held sacred
Yep.
by a facilitator who actually knows what they're doing. And so I love that. And I love that you do retreats. I think that that is so fantastic. I'm a big fan of that. And I guess, is it your website or your Instagram that would be the best place to go to learn about that for anyone interested?
Yeah, both Instagram and website for sure would be both spaces. When I the groups that I run are always like a closed container. When you're talking about like your village and people connecting in that way, most of mine are grief related, and because anyone who's gone through a difficult grief experience know that it can be very triggering to go into different communities without someone who kind of really understands what you've gone through. Um, so being in when you're talking about similarities, that is something, so those are closed containers for the safety of it. But I open it every 4 months and open new groups. And honestly, they typically run for like a year or something because people want to stay together. But that would be, yeah, I would announce those on my Instagram page or on my website and stuff like that. So,
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom today. Is there anything you want to leave the listeners with in terms of just how to deeper their connection with themselves or anything that feels important before we wrap up?
hmm, I would say it's like getting in a deeper relationship with loving yourself. I think that as women, we have this priority of taking care of everybody first and disregarding the people in our world, like our own needs, and having guilt for taking time for ourselves, right? And like I still feel it every time I go and do something, right? And I think that's a really hard conditioned thought to let go of when we are taking time away from our children or something, right? But knowing that when we are able to pour into ourselves, like we have the ability to show up more for our family members, for the people in our world, for your career, because we're getting into that space of alignment. If we are not diving into loving ourselves and feeling deserving of taking care of ourselves, we get burnt out. We're choosing everyone first. We're stuck in our like unconscious mind. And life feels hard. It feels really difficult, and we lose our ability to really know our wants and needs in the world. So I think radical self-love. That's what I would say.
Love it. Fantastic. I 100% support all of this.
Yes, perfect.
Ah, thank you so much again.